And you probably remember this part. The bad news is this. Most of us are really bad at finding that level of connection in our other relationships. That's the truth of it. Most of us, myself included, are really bad at that. And so it should be no mystery to us. Should be no mystery to us when we struggle to find the same thing in our relationship with God, because we struggle to find that kind of connection in our marriage, in our friendships, sometimes with our children. We struggle to find that kind of connection in every area of our lives, including faith. And so that is the bad news. And I use these words often like deep and intimacy and vibrant and words like that because, hopefully your marriage is not hanging by a thread. Maybe your marriage is a good marriage. Maybe you have a strong relationship with your children. It's not strained. There's nothing going on there. Maybe you have a good, strong, solid friendship with a lot of people around you. But what we're talking about is that next level. What we're talking about is going beyond often the places where we just sort of settle into, those moments where we share with each other our deepest fears, our greatest dreams, our biggest hopes. Where we're talking about sort of beyond the surface sort of relationships that we often have with people. And so this morning, we're going to talk about a little bit about how God sees us and how that relates to intimacy. I want to start with this statement. I think it's a really important statement for us all to just sort of grab and hold on to and think about and reflect on this morning. And this is it. Intimacy is not something to be acquired. Intimacy is something to be pursued. Intimacy is not something that we acquire. Intimacy is something that is to be pursued. Now guys, listen closely. Ladies, you listen closely too, but especially to the men here this morning, because you might learn something from this. There is a good chance that this is in like the top 5 complaints that your wife has about your marriage, okay? This is a good chance this is in there. She might complain that you don't spread the butter to the corners of the toast, but right after that is this issue that men especially really struggle with this, that after we're married, it's hard for us to continue developing and growing in this idea and with deeper intimacy. Because so often, men especially, and women do this too, but especially men, we see intimacy as something that is to be acquired. And so your wife may say something like, or your girlfriend or may say something like, we used to talk all the time. He used to tell me all sorts of things when we were dating. We used to have conversations where we would discuss things. And now, after we're married, it's like the switch just sort of went off. It's like, he just comes home and he just sort of sits in front of the TV or he just comes home and we don't discuss our days much or he's wrapped up in his career and it's, it was like there before we were married, but it's like as soon as we got married, it's like all of a sudden it just stopped. And one of the reasons for that is because men especially often view intimacy as something that we acquire, something that we have, and then once we have it, it's like we always have it. But that's not the way intimacy works. Intimacy is something that we pursue. So think of it in this terms, okay? So imagine like a car going down the highway in New Brunswick, and there's a car in front of you, and you're following in another car, and you're trying to keep up, and the car that you're following keeps going. It's constantly in motion. If you're trying to follow it, and you pull over, you stop at a rest stop, you turn off somewhere else, you're going to lose that. You're going to lose that vehicle. It's going to be way further ahead of you and you're not going to be able to catch up. And as soon as we stop pursuing intimacy, as soon as we stop going after it, as chasing it with everything that we have, we lose it. Because it's never something that we can acquire and hold on to and sort of put in our pocket and say, well, I'm here now. It's something that we pursue. So you want to have an intimate relationship with God. You want to be close. You want to be walking in the Spirit. You want to be connected together where you're constantly talking to God. That is something that you pursue day after day after day after day. You want to be connected with your husband. You want to be connected with your wife. You want to be walking close with them. You want to be connecting about things that are happening in your life. That's something that you pursue day after day after day after day. Intimacy is something that is to be pursued. Now, what we're going to talk about a lot this morning is another idea that sort of connects off this. And that idea is as follows. And there's one thing, one common denominator that stops us from entering into intimacy. If there's one thing that stops us from pursuing, if there's one thing that stops us from chasing after this and getting where most of us want to be, that thing is this. It is fear. It is fear. If there's one thing in our lives, your life, my life, your relationships, my relationships, that kills intimacy quicker than anything else, that thing has to be fear. Fear of judgment, fear of being found out, fear of sharing too much, fear that if we tell someone of something that's going on or share with something that's very deep in our souls, fear that their opinion of us will be lowered or changed in some way. If there's one thing that stops us from entering into a pathway that leads to intimacy with people and with God, it is fear. Fear that we will be known. Fear that people will think differently of us. Fear that this will change or that will change. A child may not tell a parent about something that happened in their day or in their life because they are afraid. They're afraid about how the parent will respond, about how the parent will react, about how this situation will play out. It's fear. Sometimes, talk about this in just a couple moments, I wonder if there's things that we don't share with God. There's things that we don't tell, if there's things that we don't really open up in our prayer life with God about because we are afraid. Afraid about how He might respond. Afraid about how God may think about us. Afraid about how this will in some way affect our relationship with God. If there's one thing that stops us from going down this pathway towards intimacy, it is fear. Fear about so many things that can happen in your life and in my life. And the truth of the matter is, sometimes we have a right. Sometimes we see why we should be afraid because you've been in situations and I've been in situations where you've shared something, where you've opened up, where you've told somebody something that you thought you'd never tell anyone, and things did not go so well. Maybe they did judge you. Maybe they did, their opinion of you did change in some way. Maybe they didn't want to be friends anymore. Maybe, they went and told something else, somebody else, so the community knew about it or heard about it, and that was a very, very hurtful thing for you. And so our response to that is most generally, we sort of step back from those situations and sort of climb back into our shells and say, you know what, I never want to go through that again. I never want to experience that again. I never want to experience that pain again. So I'll just sort of climb back inside of myself, inside of my shell, and not open up in that way with especially that person, but sometimes even with anyone like that anymore. And so we know the pain, you know it, I know it, of sharing something and then getting a reaction that we were hoping not to get. And sometimes that is really, most of the time, that is really painful for us. And so fear, often for us, blocks this pathway, blocks this road towards intimacy in our relationships with one another. Just imagine if fear was removed from the equation. Just to imagine if you had to have a conversation with someone and you knew exactly how they were going to respond to that conversation. That would certainly change things, wouldn't it? Would change things a lot. Imagine that you have a secret. Okay, and you're going to tell your husband, you're going to tell your wife, and you're wondering, your greatest fear, the thing that is holding you back from sharing that is you're afraid about how they're going to respond. And you've probably been there. I've been there. And what will they think about me? What will they do? Will they think I'm crazy? My wife already thinks I'm crazy, so that one's off the charts for me. But, you know, we're afraid of these things. But just imagine, sort of, play out this scenario. Just imagine if you knew, even before you shared, the kinds of things that they were going to say back to you. Just imagine they handed you a script, and you looked at that script, and the script read back something like, you know what? I struggle with the same thing, and I didn't think anyone else did. I was afraid to share this because I thought it was just my problem, and nobody else in the world had that problem. Well, what about if you read the script of what they would say back, and your wife or your husband, the things that they would say or the things they wrote down, said, you know what, I still love you. You know what, I feel closer to you because you've shared this with me, because you've opened up, because you've let me see a part of you that is hard for you to share with people. What about if you went to your best friend or your best mate and you told them something that you're struggling with, something that's going on in your life, and you just knew before you even shared it, you had a list of the things you were going to say, and you know, their response to you was something like, you know what, I still care about you. In fact, I think our friendship has been strengthened because you've shared this with me, or you told this with me, or you have had similar experiences that I've had. See, the point here is simply this. When judgment is removed, the pathway for intimacy opens. When judgment is removed, the pathway for intimacy is open. If I knew that people were going to respond in ways that were non-judgmental, in ways that were helpful, in ways that would strengthen relationships, you and I would be much more willing to share, much more open, much more willing to tell people things about ourselves, wouldn't we? I would be. I'm guessing you would be too. And here's the thing that's really, really cool and really, really unique about our relationship with God. And that is this. The Bible tells us how God has responded and how God will respond to who we truly are. And that's incredible. Let me just read a couple verses to you this morning. And you know, you can look these up if you want, or write them down and look them up later. But you're familiar with some of these verses. Proverbs 15:3 says this. It says, the eyes of the Lord are in every place, watching good or watching the evil and the good. Proverbs 15:3. The eyes of the Lord are in every place, watching the evil and the good. Do you ever feel like that's just a little unnerving, isn't it? It is for me. Every place that we go, the eyes of the Lord are watching us, are upon us, are seeing what's happening in our lives. The Lord is watching us. Psalm chapter 39. This is a great section of verses. Psalm 39, 1-4. They say this, O Lord, you have searched me. The psalmist says, and known me. You have searched me and known me. And then he goes on, he says, you know when I sit down and when I rise up. You understand my thought from afar. Sometimes I don't understand my own thoughts, but God understands them from afar. This is what he says. You scrutinize my path in my lying down. Then in verse 3, Psalm 39, verse 3, it says, you are intimately acquainted with all my ways. Even before there is a word on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it all. When you read verses like that, it sort of just makes you feel exposed, doesn't it? When you read verses like that, and you start to sort of sort through them, understand that there is no thought. There is nothing that we have done. There is no internet search. There is nothing going on in our lives that God does not know about us. That is challenging. It's a good thing it's God, because imagine if that was your parents. Imagine if that was your spouse. Imagine if that was your best friend. There is nothing about us that God does not know. Now, as much as that is scary, let me just read you a couple other verses. And folks, the verses that go along sort of this theme, I could have written down 20, 30, 40 verses because there's just so many of them. But I just picked out two. Psalm 36:5. So sort of taking in mind what the verses we just read said about what God knows about us. And then it says in Psalm 36:5, it says, your loving kindness, O Lord, extends to the heavens. Your faithfulness reaches the skies. Your loving kindness, O Lord, extends to the heavens. Okay, another one. Psalm 136:26. It says this, give thanks to the God of heaven, for his loving kindness is everlasting. Give thanks to the God of heaven, for his loving kindness is everlasting. See, this is what is unique, that is different about our relationship with God, that is not true in our relationship with other people. See, when it comes to relationships, I don't know if I share something with you, how you will respond, what you will think of me, how your opinion of me may change in some way. But the Bible tells us that God knows every single detail about ourselves, about our lives, about our thoughts, about the things that we say. And it says that he loves us. Isn't that incredible? That he loves us. That he knows the deepest parts of us, the parts of us that we don't want anyone to see, and that he loves us. I honestly don't have a category in my mind that I can put that into. That it makes any sort of sense to me. There's no box that I can sort of put that into that says, okay, well, if I categorize it this way or label it this way, that makes sense to me. God knows everything about me, but he still loves me. Because it just doesn't seem like that should be the case. See, God's love has no variables in it, does it? See, my love, unfortunately, has variables in it. It has many variables in it. See, my love for people is far too often, because of who I am and character flaws and sinful nature, its variables are based on things like what you think of me. So if you like me, there's a better chance I'm going to like you back. If you treat me well, and you're kind to me, then there's a better chance I'm going to be kind to you. If you haven't hurt me in some way, there's all sorts of variables that determine my kind of or my level of love towards you. And yet God knows everything about us. He knows the 100% authentic you. He knows the 100% authentic me. And he still loves me. Because his love is not based on what I do as much as he wants me to do things that honor him. His love for me is not based on what I think as much as his word tells me to think thoughts that are appropriate and loving and kind and pleasing to him. His love for me is not based on so many things that are the types of things that I base my love for others on. And so if you have a bulletin this week, you may have noticed the title for this message it's pretty simple. It's just seeing as God sees you. Seeing as God sees you. Do you understand how God sees you? He loves you. Do you understand that when we see failure in ourselves, God sees that as an opportunity for us to lean on Him? Do you see that when we make mistakes and we sin and we drop the ball and we mess up, that God sees that as an opportunity, and a joyful opportunity to step into our lives and to minister to us and to pick us up and to heal us and to bring some of those pieces back together again. And I just wonder, folks, I wonder how might our intimacy, how might our connection, how might our deepness of relationship with God grow if only we understood and looked at ourselves the same way that God looks at us. How many people here have ever put their parents' car in a ditch before? Put up your hand if you have. I knew Britt's hand was going up. I just took a wild guess there. Look, a lot of us have. A few of you, I think some of you are not being honest. I remember doing that at least once, maybe a couple times. But anyway. And you know, there's moments like that, whether it just was bad roads, or driving too fast, or did something really stupid. Where you might expect your parents to get really angry at you because you ruined their car. I flipped our car right up on its roof. 4 wheels were in the air, and it wasn't really drivable after that. Or maybe it's something else. Maybe you've dropped the ball in a big project at work and cost your company a lot of money. Or maybe you made a promise and you meant to keep it for whatever reason. You didn't keep it, and somebody in your life, they had every reason to be angry, to be upset, to sort of chew you out a little bit. And I don't know if you've ever been in one of those positions where you've done something really stupid and you expected that the response you would get, you expected that the feedback you would get from your boss, from your parents, from your friend was that they would come and they were just going to let you have it, and they were going to tell you all these things that you should have done different. And instead, to your surprise, the response that you got was kindness and gentleness and forgiveness and love. You ever been there? Do you realize that's how God sees you? Do you realize that when you sin, when you drop the ball, when you do something that you shouldn't have done, when you walk away from God, when you choose yourself and selfishness over the way that God has laid out for us, that yes, God wants you to follow His plan and His path, but that He loves you. And you might fear and you might expect the response that you would get from God would be anger and judgment and wrath and all these things, but He loves. Sometimes I wonder as Christians, this is going to sound kind of funny, but just think about it. Sometimes I wonder as Christians if we fear to tell God what God already knows about us. If we fear to tell God the things that we're thinking, the things that we're struggling with, the things that you know are keep tripping us up time and time again in our lives, if we fear to tell God about those things because we're afraid that His opinion, His thoughts, the way He loves us, if He knew we did this, how could He possibly love us the same way that He does now? And folks, to burst the bubble this morning, God already knows. And the Bible tells tells us time and time and time again that the script that God follows is yes, He wants us to follow His way, but that the script that He tells us in Scripture is that I still love you, I still care about you, I want you to draw near to me, I want you to draw close to me. Do we fear to tell God what God already knows about us? Because God's judgment, and I don't necessarily mean that our actions don't have consequences, but God's judgment towards us, how God feels about us, has been removed from the equation already, because the Bible has already told us how God will respond when we share with Him the things that are going on in our lives. And when judgment is removed, the pathway for intimacy opens, doesn't it? I'm going to finish with a prayer this morning, but just before we do that, next week I want to talk to you about a final sermon on this topic. I want to talk to you next week about the one thing, or let's say the most important thing that I think that you can do to make progress, to take steps, to move towards a closer, stronger, more intimate relationship with God. We're going to look at that next week, and I hope you join us for that. I hope you connect with us about that. I want to spend some time in prayer this morning. We did this a few weeks ago, but just would you just bow your head with me this morning? And this is what I want you to be thinking about, okay? This is what I want us to sort of be reflecting on this morning. The first question is this, and it relates to how we respond to other people. And it's pretty simple. Are we judgmental? See, if you want people not to share anything with you, if you want your relationship never to go beyond where it is now, if you want your relationship to stay exactly where it is, never to move forward, never to progress, never to get any deeper, there is one way that you can do that that will make it really easy to be exactly where you are in 10 years from now, and that is just be judgmental. So instead of being judgmental, maybe we should just take some time and reflect and be open. And express to people how we love them and how we care about them and how we feel about them, despite the fact that they may share things with us that are hard. Despite the fact that we, that maybe they've taken a risk and shared something about a dream that they have, and they're thinking in their head, well, if I share that, they're going to think I'm crazy. And instead we can express to our friend, to our spouse, to our children, how we love them and how we care about them and how we support them. So are we judgmental? The second thing I want us to think about as we pray together and just sort of as individuals for a moment is simply this. Do we fear God? And I don't mean fear in a way that like sort of lightning bolts come out of the sky and we need to be careful. Not like that. Do we realize how God sees us? And sees our lives? Do we see ourselves through the same lens that God sees us? And instead of God feeling disappointment in us and sort of tossing off to the side, do we realize that how much God loves us in spite of all our struggles? Do we realize how that can lead us to draw closer to Him, to a deeper level of connection and relationship with Him? Take a couple moments this morning, and just reflect on that. And I would just encourage you to pray a prayer that goes something like this. God, do I see you as you see me in my life? Pray, Lord, what is it that you want me or what is it you want to show me? How can I open up to you? How can I grow in this way? Would you just speak to me? Give me a pathway forward. Give me a few steps that I can take that will help me grow, that will help me understand in a deeper way just how much you love me and just how much you care for me. Would you just pray something like that with me this morning? Just take a couple moments and just reflect in your own heart about what God is saying to you today. And then I'm going to finish with a closing word of prayer in just a couple minutes.